Hello, and I am back again. Today I am now showing you a stitch tutorial, though if you've never seen this stitch, it'll be a new video for you. Today, instead, I am going to be doing a video for one of my newest patterns, free patterns at that. It's a mug rug pattern. It is super textured and I love it. So I'm going to show you how to do this. So this is what it looks like. Here's another one. This is a set I'm working on. It's a great texture. It'd be good for washcloths too, but I am doing it for mug rugs. These measure about 7 inches by 5 inches without fringe, so they're nice and big. So today I'm going to be using a 5mm hook. I got this from Hobby Lobby. I'm going to be using 2 different colors of Hobby Lobby I Love This Cotton. This is Hot Orchid, and this is just a light gray. And then of course you need scissors. And I have a tool to use that is actually really cheap and easily a piece of a cardboard tube. You could use toilet paper tubes or paper towel tube, but what I did was I just cut a section off that tube and then I cut a slit in one side. So this is like the perfect size for my mug rugs. I wrap it around and then I cut it, and it gives me 5-inch long pieces of yarn roughly, and then my fringe ends up being like 2.5 inches. So I will show you how I use this later. But first, we're going to get started with our pattern. I'm going to use gray for the body of this one. So we are going to chain 15 stitches. So we're going to do our slip knot. And we're going to chain 15. So 1, 2. And then we're going to chain 2 more. So there's my 15. I'm going to chain 2 more. So the stitch we're going to be working in today is called the Alpine Stitch. This stitch creates a lot of texture, but it can be a little challenging to work before if you've never worked it. So what we're going to do a row of double crochet. So we're going to work into the 3rd stitch from the first chain. So I'm going to do just double crochets all the way across. This provides the foundation for the front post stitches. We're going to do 2 rows from now, because that is how the Alpine Stitch kind of works. So as you're working your 15 across, I always work in just the one top loop of my chain. I know some people like to do just a foundation double crochet. That is something you can do. I am not very good at it, nor do I like it very much unless it's for something that's wearable, and this isn't wearable. So I don't mind doing a chain for this starting foundation. Plus it makes it a little easier to work into later. So I'm coming up here on the end. Our next row is going to be a row of single crochets. So there's my last stitch. I'm going to double check, make sure I have 15. With this stitch, you want to make sure you have an odd number. So if you decide to go bigger or smaller than this, make sure you have an odd number of stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yep, I have 15. So I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to turn. I'm going to work a single crochet in every stitch. You don't have to worry too much about keeping your edges like super straight, because we're going to go around with a single crochet at the end, but it helps if you can still see a good clean edge, because maybe you don't want a single crochet around the end. It's your mug rug. You will be able to find this pattern on my blog. It'll be listed for free. I will put the link down in the description for you. And I would love to see all of your creations on Instagram. So we've done our row of single crochet. So now we need to chain 2. I usually chain 1 at the beginning of rows for double crochet because I find it leaves less of a gap, but I'm going to do chain 2 this time. So we're going to double crochet in the first stitch, and then this is your choice. Alpine Stitch, from what I have found many times when remembering or trying to remember how to do this stitch, most of the time is a front post double crochet. That works if you have a looser tension. What I'm going to show first is a front post double crochet. So we're not working into the single crochet row. We're just ignoring that. We're only going to work into these double crochets that are below. So a regular double crochet front post around this second double crochet works, but I find it a little short. So double crochet in the first stitch, front post double crochet around the second, and then we're going to double crochet in the next stitch. Hopefully I didn't miss a stitch. It's the hard part. Nope, we're good. If you're not sure, just look at the back. If you only see one little chain in there, then you're good. So I did a front post double crochet there. I'm going to show you what it looks like with a triple. So I did my 1 double crochet. I'm going to go in here. Then I'm going to do my next double crochet. Personally, I like the triple better. It is just a little taller, but it gives us just a little more height. And if you crochet loosely, then the double crochet front post will be fine. But my tension is typically on the tighter side. That is something I've come to know over the last couple of years. So I like the triple just because it helps keep my work from curling, and I don't know, it just gives a little more texture. So I'm actually going to frog it to change that double to a triple. I just wanted to show you the difference. So this pattern alternates rows of double crochet and the front post stitches and single crochets. The single crochet just gives it space, so we always skip that when we're working. So cut back up. So the way this pattern works, and the stitch works actually, is you always start with a double crochet in your first stitch. Doesn't matter what row you're on, unless you're on a single crochet, then you do single crochets. But any of the rows where you're actually doing your front post stitches, you're starting with a double crochet. This will never change. You will also end with a double crochet. But then you alternate the double crochets with my preference of front post triple crochets. And you just keep going back and forth between the two. So I'm going to finish this row and do my single crochets, and then I'll show you how to do the next row. Because if you just kept carrying on how we're doing this first row of post stitches, then it's not going to alternate like we want it to and have that wonderful texture that comes with the Alpine stitch. This stitch would make a beautiful blanket. I don't have patience for that. I'm not a fan of blankets. At least making them. I love blankets, I just don't like making them. But remember, if you make a blanket with this or anything, you always want an odd number of stitches, never even. You always want odd, or it doesn't quite work out right. Okay. So there's my first row of this Alpine stitch. Kind of looks like ribbing that you might use for a hat. That works. But I'm going to chain one. I'm just going to work single crochets all the way across. Here we go. I'm going to double check to make sure I still have 15 stitches because I sometimes add stitches. Yeah. I'm good. I still have 15 stitches. So we're going to be doing a 4-row repeat. That's kind of how this pattern works. So after our first two, just the double crochet and the single crochet, starting with that first front post stitch row is where we start this 4-row repeat. So we do our front post stitches, we do our single crochets, and then we do our next row of front post stitches, and then another row of single crochets. So for this row, because we wanted to alternate, this is how it works. I tried this a different way just to see how it looked, and it created very holy edges no matter how I did it. So definitely do it this way. So we're going to double crochet in the first 2 stitches. And then the next stitch is where we start our post stitches. So I'm just going to pause. Well, let me do my double crochet real quick. It helps it lay flat. So as you start to do this, it'll alternate between which stitch is up. If you can see that. So it creates this really nice texture. And that's honestly why I love this stitch. I am all about texture, literally. I don't know that I've really made something that didn't have at least a little texture. It's great. So I'm going to finish this row. So you'll carry on as normal. And then we get to our last 2 stitches. So obviously in this sequence we're going to double crochet in the next stitch. And then we're also going to double crochet in the last stitch. This is what helps give us nice, more even, less holy edges, which is always needed. And we still get to alternate our stitches. So then our next row is single crochet. There's that row. I'm going to do my chain 2. So now, for this next row, we just go back to what this first row of post stitches was. So double crochet in the first stitch, and then post stitch around our second double crochet. And it gives us a nice alternating texture. And you just repeat. For my mug rug pattern, I tell you to work 18 total rows. So this is row 6. So you repeat rows 3 through 5. I think that sounds right. Like 3 times, I think, and it puts you at 18. And then you do one more repeat of the post stitch and one more single crochet row. But on that last single crochet row, we work a border all the way around. I like having easy stitches to work my fringe into, so I prefer to just do a single crochet border around, and it helps that. So I will continue working this. I'm going to fast forward it so you don't have to sit here and watch me do this for rows on end. But I do want to tell you real quick, if you're not sure what row you're on, if you turn it to the back, the rows alternate just a little bit enough in visual aspect that you can figure it out. So this first rows are double crochets, then we have single. This next row, where it's just a little more open and has a little more holes, is where we did our front post stitches. And if you look at the next row, it's single crochets, and then you can see it again. So that's how you can count. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That was my 7th row. So you repeat rows 3 through 6. But that's how I count. So it helps me count it. So it works, right? So I'll be back to show you how to do the border. Okay, I am starting my last row of post stitches. So this is row number 19. I don't like to end on a 2 double crochet for the post row, which is why I say to repeat rows 3 through 6 3 times, and then I have you repeat the rows 3 and 4. Well, I guess 4 and 5. Depends on how you're reading the pattern. But this is the last post stitch row. These work up really quick. Yes, I know I fast forwarded, but in the end, it actually still works up pretty quick. Yes, it'll be a little holy. If you don't necessarily like that, you can always go down a hook size. But these are like coasters, so I don't hate that it's a little more open because it's still cotton and it'll still soak up any spills. Plus it's washable, which is why I absolutely love cotton. So, on to the last row. This is where, see, so my work is curling a little bit. It's not a whole lot, but this is where we do the single crochet border. So on this one, it's not quite the same. It's a little wonky shaped. It's okay. I don't strive for perfect rectangles. But we're gonna chain one. We're gonna flip it over so we can turn. we're going to work single crochet in that corner and all the way across. So I'm at my corner stitch. Sometimes I work 3 single crochet into a corner. Sometimes I do a single crochet, a chain, and then second single crochet just so I have a nice corner, and I think that's what I'm going to do for this one. On my blog, when you read the pattern, it'll tell you to put 3 single crochet. Now, the fun part working down the side is you alternate rows of single crochet and double crochet. The general rule for working stitches evenly on something that doesn't already have a structured chain or stitch is you do 1 single crochet in a single crochet row and you do 2 in a double. I just kind of eyeball it. It doesn't really matter for the sides on this one. You don't want too many because then like that side will be huge, but if you have too little, it'll make your work curl. So play it kind of by ear, see how it reacts. I kind of have a mixture of doing both. But I also know my tension, and my tension is somewhere in between too tight and too loose. I wouldn't say it's perfect though, because I still have a lot of issues with my tension. This isn't something I would gauge swatch necessarily, because you can make it as big or as small as you want. But if you're trying to figure out how to make a blanket out of this stitch, that's what you'd want to do. So you know how many stitches are in, say, 2 inches or 4 inches, and go from there. So I'm coming up on my corner again. I'm going to do single crochet, chain, single crochet. Now I'm across my starting chain, so I'm going to work single crochets into it. And I know this doesn't quite look gray. That's thanks to my lighting, but I'll have a great picture at the end of what it looks like. Okay, so I'm at my corner again, so single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. Now I like to crochet over my ends. I hate weaving them in, so this makes it go faster for me. It's your choice what you do. If you don't mind weaving them in, then just don't crochet around it. I like to crochet around it. And I make sure to pull it so that it is tight and not just wiggly in there. Because then what was the point of crocheting over it? Which this method doesn't work for everything, I will say that. But if you can do it, then do it. So again, you're just trying to evenly go down the side. I should double check to make sure I have the same stitches on each side. But again, this is not something that necessarily matters on the long sides. It's something that more matters on the short side, which even then, it's still probably not going to be perfect unless you sit there and count it out. And for me, that's, I guess, not a huge issue. I tend to leave mistakes as they go anyways. I'm not one that likes to frog unless it changes the whole look of the thing. There was one time I had made a cardigan that needed like 6 sides, and I messed it up 3 times before I got it right, and I was so mad because I had to frog it. So there's that. I am going to snip this off and pull that through. So I've got this little rug. for a coffee cup. You could block it. Cotton's not hard to block. I'm not going to block cotton, especially not this, because it's something that would get washed anyways. So, on to fringe. Okay, so we're going to move on to fringe now. You need a toilet paper roll, some yarn, your crochet hook, and of course scissors. I'm going to unroll my yarn a little bit, but then you're going to wrap it around whatever device you're using to get your fringe. My paper towel roll will give me about 5-inch long strands after I cut it in half, but as you can see, I'm just wrapping it around, making sure it's not too tight, not too loose, and we don't want them really far apart. We want to make sure our strands are kind of close so we can get a decent number on there. After we wrap it, we're going to cut it through the slit we made, or if you're just using a piece of paper, you're going to cut it on one end, and then you're going to have small pieces of yarn to do fringe with, and you did it a lot quicker than measuring them all out. Now that we have our fringe, we're going to take 2 pieces of it and we're going to work it into the end of our short ends. I like to use 2 pieces because it gives it a full look and I don't have to go in every stitch across. This is where I use my crochet hook. I'll insert it in the stitch and pull the loop through. And then if you can, I try to use my fingers to pull the ends through so I can keep them even. Sometimes I need to use another crochet hook, but this was a trick I actually learned when I was making tutus many years ago to pull through on my crocheted tops that I did for dresses. And you're just going to repeat this process. You're going to grab 2, you're going to line them up, make sure they're nice and even, and you're going to loop it to make sure it's kind of in the half mark. I like to work both sides at the same time so that I know I have the same number of fringe tassels on each side, but you do what works for you. But yeah, sometimes you'll have to cut more fringe. I don't like to cut a lot at the beginning because then I end up with too much and then I waste all this yarn. So I do it in a way that lets me not waste it. I'm going to fast forward to the end now so you don't have to see me do 10 minutes worth of fringe, and then I'll show you a final picture. Okay, so as I'm coming up on the end here, I have my two corners look a little bare, so I decided to do another set of tassel fringes on each side, um, just so it actually looks kind of even for once. Um, After this, I didn't do it in my video because I didn't have my yarn needle, but you'd sew in any ends from the actual project. You could do it before fringe or after. I tend to do ends the very last thing because I absolutely hate them. And there you have it, a finished mug rug. Share it on Instagram, tag me at Naughty Bliss Boutique, or use the hashtag Naughty Bliss Boutique. I check it daily and I love sharing finished projects from people who use my patterns.